Tom Murphy's with us, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Whole Hog Sports, and brought to you by our friends at the Arkansas Beef Council. We'll tell you the winner of the best burger in Arkansas coming up in a bit. But, Tom, starting kind of with what Sam Pittman said yesterday, I know the tight end stuff, we'll get into that in just a little bit, but what did you maybe take away as the biggest thing that Sam Pittman had to say in his presser meeting yesterday?
Good morning, guys. Always a pleasure. I'll get to that, but I got to say that was said last week. I said that, and then Tommy, that was a great one-liner, and you guys have already immortalized it, so kudos to that. 1 week old. Let's see. I think the injury updates, Jaquindon Jackson's ankle, so if he's not ready to go this week, and it doesn't look that way, then they think he'll be able to come off the open date and be ready for the Texas game. So that's good news. He's a really good back, and as well as Braylon Russell and Rashad Dubinion played last week, having him healthy again only, that bolsters the position. You like that. But let's see, 2 tight ends off the team, Varkey's Gums, who did not travel to Starkville, and Ty Washington, who's, one of my Georgia kids who I did Hog Future on back in the day. Hate that that's happened, but now they're a little shy at tight end, and I don't know. Hey, the way Patrick Kutas played last weekend, he came off and he played with he had the best blocking grade on the team, and on the pool plays he was mashing people. So they've been kind of touting that when he gets back and he's ready, we got to let him play, and I think that amped up the O-line play last week. And
Pittman said that they're going to try and redshirt him still. I think it's safe to potentially assume that he's going to sit out the Louisiana Tech game because you need him more for SEC play. But, Tom, we've seen this offensive line struggle at times in pass blocking. You mentioned the run. I mean, is he a guy that can have an impact in pass blocking when you go up against some really stout defensive lines here in these next 5 weeks?
Well, he certainly has a chance. I mean, and the thing is, you can sub him out with Blackstock some, and you got yourself 6 operational O-linemen, and then there's some other guys that haven't played a ton, like Joe Moore and a couple of others who could help you as well. So I just think it helps to get a fresh body in at this point of the year. When you've kind of, other than him, you've kind of managed to avoid major injuries on your roster. There's been a few. The Jalen Braxton one maybe the lengthiest, and obviously Kutas, those two. But I don't know. Anytime you can supplement with a guy who is a projected starter, and now he looks fresh like he did last week, that's a good thing.
Tom, I thought one of the more interesting conversations you guys had with Sam Pittman yesterday was about I think he said 6 players, and it kind of came up with Patrick Kutas, who they're managing the 4 games they can play in and remain in use of their redshirt season. I thought that was a very interesting and valuable conversation on how they're going to manage some of these guys, and he did let it be known that Patrick Kutas, there will be one game he's not going to be on that offensive line just because they want to preserve his red shirt. He mentioned Kobe Brannon, the true freshman from Fort Smith. I thought that was some interesting information he gave us yesterday.
It was, and Jalen Braxton obviously falls into that mix because he's played 2 games. So if he comes back and he's ready, you get 2 more plus the bowl game with him. And so maybe those are the last 2 or, some combination. And as Ty mentioned, I think, optimally you play Patrick Kutas in the rest of the conference games. Louisiana Tech, you give him a spell, a breather there to have him ready for, the Mizzou game. And we'll see how that plays out. But there's a couple of other guys. I meant to go back and look at how many games some of these freshmen who have played, like Bradley Shaw comes to mind. But maybe he's been on special teams all year, and he got some play. In fact, he was in on one of the takeaway plays last weekend. And then there's DNs like Collins and maybe Kavion Henderson who might factor into that mix. But I haven't gone back to see how much they've been playing on special teams and such.
Yeah, and something certainly worth keeping an eye on moving forward. As you gear back up for the balance of the season, you've got a home game this week. You got 3 of your final 4 at home. He talked about that. You went through that stretch early, but now it pays off. And being bowl eligible potentially this Saturday would certainly, I think, allow you to plan for a future that in the last couple of years you hadn't maybe been allowed to plan for long term behind the scenes. Yeah,
absolutely. And, finishing up with all these home games helps you. But you did have that one that got away, the Oklahoma State game. That you can't get it back, and they'd already be bowl eligible now, assuming everything else played out the way it did. If you'd won that game, and they're obviously struggling now, but yeah, there's a lot of positive to look forward to. But these teams, they're all ranked, including this Ole Miss game. There's really interesting matchups to me, both sides of the ball. Ole Miss is so good defensively, like on each level. How will Bobby Petrino try to exploit that? Will they get the same kind of protection they've had in the recent games? Taylor Green's numbers, the last 3 games, unbelievable. He's 70+% completions the last 3, when the 3 before that he was at 49. I mean, that's a crazy improvement. And then on the other side of the ball, how will Ole Miss attack? What will Travis Williams and company do? They gave up a lot of yards on the edge last week, and we know Ole Miss can throw those bubble screens. If you get good blocking and guys don't fit well, they can break, like the first touchdown against Mississippi State, and they can throw over the top with a lot more precision than what we saw from Mississippi State last week. So they're going to be very tough to defend, and, of course, the run game is obviously good too.
Tom Murphy with us, courtesy of the Arkansas Beef Council. He's with Whole Hog Sports, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Tom, why has the defense taken a step back in these last 2 weeks, in your opinion?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, maybe some depth problems come to mind. Haven't had all their guys in the secondary, but they're getting them back. I think Sam was truly, maybe befuddled a little bit that they didn't fit better on the bubbles and some of that edge stuff. The Mississippi State broke into long gains, and he said 11 explosives. But Georgia and A&M gave up offense to Mississippi State as well. So I think the scheme is in place. And even though it was 400-plus yards, 470 or whatever Mississippi State got, you more than offset that with your takeaways. So, it is frustrating that they gave up the big yardage. LSU they couldn't get to Nussmeier. He was good on the run. And I heard the radio call Saturday night. Nussmeier on the run wasn't as successful against Texas A&M. So they've got to be able to find ways to pressure Jackson Dart. Games at Arkansas. I'm sorry.
No, you finish your thought.
Well, just the games they haven't pressured well, teams like LSU, they've exploited that. And the games they have pressured well, they got a bunch of takeaways.
We saw Arkansas get a big-time win before their first bye against the Tennessee Volunteers. Tom, with Texas coming into town in 2.5 weeks, how important is this game to get a win, considering the coming off byes hasn't been, honestly, a luxury for any SEC team this season?
Yeah, it really hasn't, and that's a real head-scratcher. They just got to show up. There's been some home games where they haven't played very well, and I think they understand what's at stake if you can get bowl eligible. And, honestly, I think if they beat ranked Ole Miss team, they will probably end up being in the rankings. I certainly considered long and hard putting Arkansas 25 on my ballot, and I think I went with Vanderbilt, which actually lost last week, but played Texas so close. There's just so many two-loss teams that have bad losses and things like that. So they're certainly – if they could beat Ole Miss, there's a chance they wind up in the first college football playoff rankings next week.
Wow.
Tom, when you look at the box score here, and you got 58 points scored by the Razorbacks, you look down at third down conversions at 0 for 7, and those two things don't normally go together.
Yeah.
How do we, they were 2 for 2 on fourth down conversions, but did not convert a third down in a game that the team scores 58 points.
It's such a wacky stat, and it's a number they've been so good at. In fact, I wrote about it today. I think they're still 16th maybe in the country in third down percentage, which is great. Just under 50%. But to go 0 for 7 against a very poor defense is just unbelievable. When Sam Pittman was asked that, it happened to be the first question of the post game. He's like, well, the rest of the plays were really good because they dominated. Wally Hall added it up. I think he said 392 yards on first down. That's enough for a game sometimes, just on first down. They scored a lot of touchdowns on second down, so they didn't get to third down a lot. But when they did, they weren't successful. They were behind the chains a few times, and also, three of them wound up with field goals, and 2 of them wound up with fourth down conversions. So that only leaves you 2 more that they missed third down, and one of them they were backed up. So there's your explanation.
Yeah, for the season, 51 of 105, or 49%. On third down, as you said, 16th in the country, but on fourth down, 8 of 15. Meanwhile, allowing opponents 37%, 40 of 108. So doing okay in that department comparison-wise with opponents. But it just stood out to me, and I knew he was asked about it on Saturday. But those two things rarely, if ever, go together.
That is true. It was just there's something that happens in every game. You're like, wow, as a big-time fan, that was interesting. And in that game, I do believe a great team on third down against a horrible defense goes 0 for 7 and scores 58 points. Just doesn't add up.
Let me ask you real quick before we go. A&M's atop the league at 5-0 after beating LSU. They got South Carolina, Auburn, and Texas left in their three remaining SEC games. Is it safe for Aggie fans to make their reservations for Atlanta at this point with 3 games to go?
Wow. I mean, in your heads, you're probably thinking that. But if you guys watched the SEC shorts this week, A&M's had this history of, coming up. I don't know. It's just weird. I haven't looked into it that much other than South Carolina's been a tough out. And when you think about it, Arkansas's performance against A&M, other than, losing the opener against Notre Dame, Mike Elko's first game, Arkansas's performance in that game was pretty doggone stout. You can play the comparison game and say, well, UAB, not a stout performance. A couple of other games, what they did LSU game, they didn't match up with, what their game plans and their game flows have been like. But against A&M, they hung in there, obviously had a chance to win the game.
Go ahead, Tommy.
I was like, Tom, great stuff. We got another interesting weekend for the SEC before the bye for the Razorbacks, and we'll talk about it some more on Thursday.
Sounds like a plan. See y'all.
All right, Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Whole Hog Sports with us.
Basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all of your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the games. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, to even political props. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.